Welcome to Is This Great Game or What? And our special guest this week is Don Mattingly, one of the greatest players that I ever covered in my 45 years of covering baseball. Now he is the bench coach for the Philadelphia Phillies. Don, this is Jeff Kirkchin. Meet my son.
Jeff, I see the good Philly hat on. I haven't seen that color yet, but I'm sure my young son will find it.
Yes, of course.
He is good. I mean, we had so much Blue Jay stuff, and as soon as he knew we were going to Philly, here comes the Philly stuff starts coming and showing up at the house. So he's not afraid to switch gears.
Right. And of course, Don Mattingly's son, one of his sons, is Preston Mattingly, who is the general manager of the Philadelphia Phillies. So we'll start right there, Don. You get to work with your son. Like, how cool is that?
I'm looking forward to it. Preston, he's always called me so when he was working in San Diego, he would call me and I'm managing the Marlins. Hey, this guy's on the waiver. You guys should pick him up. You should do this. You should do that. And I'm like, Preston's probably getting coffee for people at that point, right? And so he's telling me what to do. And I'm like, I'm not the GM, Press. I just like whatever they give me. So Mike Hill, I'd say, hey, what's this guy looking like? Preston calls me. So, but yeah, it's going to be fun. It comes with two sides of the coin, right? The Garth Brooks thing, where the good is being able to work there. The tough part is it is family. It is two sides, locker room, front office. That's changed a lot over the years, where it's a lot more interchangeable, a lot more. When I played, honestly, the front office was barely in the locker room.
Right.
People thought George Steinbrenner lived in the locker room. He was hardly ever in there. Or the GM, I probably couldn't tell you who they were most of the time. But that's changed. So I think it makes it a little easier. It does. I do want to make sure I build my relationship where I really value the trust of guys that you're not running upstairs and telling everything and anything that happens down there.
Right. And as you know, Don, the Pat Gillicks of the world never went into the clubhouse. They never felt like that was their place. Their place was up in the booth watching the games. And just another of the major changes that we've seen in the game over the last 40, 50 years. Just unbelievable.
Yeah, no doubt. It's a change, and it's probably for the better, because I think guys are a lot more comfortable. The GM walks in, having a conversation with him. Right. And it may not be about anything other than their kids or something or whatever. So I think it's a good thing. I just came from a little bit different era, so I'm protective of the locker room. I feel like that's the space. There's not much space for these guys nowadays to go. Everybody's got a camera. Everybody's watching. So there's only a few places. On the plane is a great place for the guys.
Right.
The locker room has to be as good as it can be, but it's not as good as it used to be.
Right. All right. Before we get to baseball, Don, just tell me the last time you shot a basketball.
Oh, well, on a little goal the other day, because we got one out in our barn outside.
Right.
But we have one downstairs that Louis plays on a little bit now and then.
Right.
And so I shot the small ball. But yeah, if I get around it, I like kind of shooting a little bit.
Right. What is a little goal? Like, how high is the basket? Is that a 6-footer or is it a 3-footer?
Yeah, 6-footer, something you have indoors in the basement. All right.
So Jeffrey could dunk it on the 6-foot hoop, right, Jeff?
I've got like a 2.5-foot hoop right over here in my basement for my 2.5-year-old daughter. I could definitely jam on that thing, Dad. That's for sure.
Right. All right. Now, Don, don't be modest here. How good a shooter were you in high school?
I was okay. I don't think I was a great shooter. I probably more could get to the rim, handled the ball really well. Probably shot too much, honestly. I think our teams would have been better if I distributed more.
Now you're 6 feet tall. Could you? I hope I don't insult you here. Could you dunk it in high school?
At one point, I could dunk a volleyball.
Right.
Oh.
But I couldn't handle the basketball enough to dunk.
So you can't palm a basketball?
It depends, but usually the ball you would use in a game
Right.
or in practice, they're not like the ones that you use out in the back,
Right.
where they've worn down, where they stick to your hands.
Right. And how good a player was Preston? He was a really good basketball player. Agreed?
Really good. Yeah. And he was, I think Preston's like 6'2" or so, and played like the probably the 3 or the 2, sometimes the guard, sometimes the small forward, but could really jump and get up. Really good defender. Was fast. Not necessarily quick, but long speed. Like I would notice it with him when he got a step on a guy, he was gone.
Right.
But he wasn't like a jitterbug type guy. He was more of that long, like surprise you speed.
Right.
So Don, as you imagine, right, we're a father-son podcast. We talk about baseball, but basketball is a big part of our lives. And I remember the first time I blew past my dad in a pickup game, and that was a big accomplishment. He was not happy about that. We were playing sons against fathers, and I blew by him one time. And listen, I think before he got his hip replaced, I think he could have still beaten me one-on-one every single time. But what was it like for you the first time Preston, took you to the post, or one of your boys really kind of like you said, uh-oh, I don't have a step on these guys anymore?
Preston happened a lot quicker than I would have liked. I will say that. I think it's either 8th grade or freshman year.
Wow.
Yeah, he got good quick, and I was like out of shape, and he would just dribble around and try to get me to chase him, and I'd be breathing heavy. But I was probably pretty good inside. He would have more trouble with me inside. All my brothers, 6'4", played underneath, learned how to score on those guys and compete with those guys. So I was probably better. I could push him around a little bit around the hoop.
Right.
But when I had to go outside with him, I was, at that point, it's too late.
Right. Don, Peter Gammons told me a story once where he went to a bar with you and you were shooting free throws in the bar and you made like some absurd number of free throws in a row. Would you please tell us that story? Because Peter told me this 30 years ago.
Well, I had a restaurant at one point.
Right.
Not a great move in my life, owning a restaurant. But it was fun for a while. But we put a hoop in there, and it kind of came from I think it was Shenanigans in Chicago. Would hang out in there when we'd go to Chicago, and they had a hoop in there. I always thought that was cool.
Right.
And so we put a hoop in our bar. We'd have a free throw contest for charity, every year. But, you get where you shoot pretty good in there. So I got where I was pretty good. Like if we shot 100 free throws in high school, I'm hitting the high 80s for sure.
Wow.
But, sometimes more.
Don, I went to a bar in Minneapolis a long time ago with Mike Flanagan, one of the great shooters ever. And it was like a real basket in the bar, just like the one. And Mike Flanagan and I, geez, I can't believe how self-serving it is. We ran the hoop for like an hour and a half. And these guys got really pissed at us. And Jim Evans, the umpire, was shooting with us. And he almost got in a fight.
Be a shocker right there. Umpires arguing.
So, Jeff, it was so great. These umpires who are so good at what they do, they're getting yelled at all day. He goes out to just shoot hoops with his buddies, and he almost got in a fight because the guys were so terrible. It was so bad.
Yeah, but those kind of places are fun.
Yeah.
So, Peter came, I think he came and did an article for maybe a Sports Illustrated article or something he was working on, and he came and hung out for a couple of days. So we took him in there and schooled him a little bit.
Yeah.
That type of thing.
And Peter also wrote a great story, Don, about dinner with you and Wade Boggs and Ted Williams in 1986. I interviewed Ted Williams a few times, never been more scared in my life because he was so intimidating. What was it like for you to sit next to one of the two greatest hitters of all time and talk hitting? What was that like?
It was not comfortable. Ted's kind of one of those guys and it's the first time meeting Ted, so I didn't really know Ted. I think Boggsy might have known him, obviously from Boston spring trainings. I'm assuming Ted would come around or they would have met somehow. But Ted is big and bold, right? It's
Yes.
I kind of liken him to Bobby Knight. Bobby was like, he was a big man. And he was like, not, I wouldn't say loud, but like sure of himself and bold. And when he talked to you and he ran the conversation, and that's kind of what it was like with Ted, is that's the way that went. But it was a lot of fun talking, hitting. We just sit there, drink beer, eating shrimp. I think it was Tio Pepe's in Tampa on the other side of the causeway there from where we stayed in a spring training game.
Was there anything he said that you took with you in that moment and you thought, wow, I'm talking to maybe the greatest hitter of all time? Was there a nugget or something that you still think about, maybe even tell your players?
You know what it was more than anything? That it was kind of over. This is when the Walt Riniak, all that stuff was going on with weight shift, things like that. Charlie Lau. And Ted was like, you don't shift weight, and it's kind of like you kind of do, but it was probably different. The communication or the wording is different. It's a little like today, right? There's so many new terms for pitches that the pitches are the same, but they have a way to identify them and they have a way to number them. The vert on a fastball or the horizontal or whatever the pitch movement is. And it felt like that conversation as much as anything, but it was kind of over that weight shift thing. And Bogsy and I think, were both arguing weight shift. And Ted was like, you don't shift weight. And so, Ted's going to win the talk. But I don't know if I went all in on – because if you watch him, he did shift weight. But he's just one of those guys, probably less, like
right.
an Ohtani or somebody that's able, big, strong, better than everybody else, sees the ball better than everybody else, and just kind of – was able to stand there and with less movement.
Right.
Yeah.
But the game today dictates more movement, I think, because velo's so much higher on a consistent basis throughout a pitching staff. Movement is identified. Pitching where they've identified what you handle, what you don't. So much more information and so much more directed. Pitching's definitely better in overall, right? I'm sure there's been great pitchers throughout the years, but when you look at a staff of 13 guys, you got a number of guys that are, touching over 95, close to 100.
Yeah, one of my favorite moments we've had on this podcast, Don, you talk about the presence of Ted Williams, was when Dan Shaughnessy told us a story while we were at the Hall of Fame recording the podcast. And he said, we sat down and we ended up at a table with Ted Williams and nobody said a word. And then Ted goes, well, scared to death, aren't you? And Dan says, yeah, we were. Nobody knew what to say, how to start the conversation.
That's it. Like trying to argue hitting with Ted Williams is not a great position to be in.
No, not at all.
Not a great position.
Right. Switching gears, Don, tell us about your ambidexterity that you had as a kid and you still have today.
Yeah, just naturally threw both ways, all my brothers right-handed. And I don't know if that had something to do with it or not, but always caught right, for the most part. Probably have more gloves around the house that were right-handed, threw more that way. I was talking earlier, caught in Little League, played short and third base right-handed and like Babe Ruth. And then as I made the high school team, all the positions I played were, I was definitely stronger left-handed, but I always threw naturally right-handed as well. It was just always there.
So Don, I know it's like almost a backwards question, but because it doesn't really matter at a certain point, but you would say you are a natural throwing righty, but you throw harder lefty. Would you say that?
I'd say I'm probably more of a natural lefty.
Okay.
And I could throw right naturally.
Wow.
Could you?
Yeah.
My daughter, Kelly, Jeffrey's sister, scored 11 points in a high school game, shooting all the shots with her opposite hand. She's ambidextrous also. She was a great shooter in high school. Senior year, she made 54 out of 56 free throws her senior year.
Oh, wow.
But when she needed to switch to her left hand, if she's driving to the left side, she could do that. Could you shoot a basketball pretty well with your right hand because it was so dexterous?
I would say I'm more left-handed shooter,
right?
But no problem. Like if I'm going right, I'm using my right hand around the rim.
Right.
Wow.
I'm not having to shoot left-handed, going to my right.
So in '86, Don, when Lou Piniella played you 3 games at third base, started you twice at third base as a left-handed player, did you ever consider playing third base right-handed, or did you just say, no, I got to play the way that I got to play?
Well, at that point, I hadn't thrown right-handed enough to like have the arm strength to throw the ball across the diamond like that. And so I definitely wouldn't have tried to play that right-handed. If it's a second base, that's a possibility. But obviously, we did that for an out too in the Pine Tar game.
Right.
But no, I didn't think about it. I mean, it would have been nice, honestly, because some of the plays are right-handed plays. And they're really, you can't really make them left-handed.
Right. Now, Don, we know you've told me this. Keith Hernandez told me this. First base is a left-hander's position. It is better played by a left-hander. And yet this year, Don, I did the research. I wrote this story. There were only 4 primary first basemen in baseball this year that threw with their left hand. Did that surprise you? Does that worry you at all? Why is that?
No, it doesn't really worry me. I think that we use more people at first base. Right. I think it's more about the profile of the position. I think it's probably came to the point where you don't have to be left-handed to play first base. Right. I'm not, again, I think it's like coming off the bag. The throw to second base is more of a natural throw, but guys are so good at making that throw. So it doesn't really surprise me and it doesn't worry me about it, because I think if the profile fits for a guy that's, the profile of first base, where you want to have some power, you want to be driving in runs, that type of thing. It's just a matter if you can defend over there if you're left or right-handed. So it doesn't really, I don't think it's that big of a deal. I think it's nice to have it if you do with tags and things like that.
Right.
Yeah, these are the kind of things my dad loses sleep over, Don, is there's only 4 primary first basemen that are lefties. I can't believe it. So These are the kind of things that we and on our podcast get to have fun with when we're being statisticians. Now, Don, we actually teased our audience that you were going to be on. We were really excited to have you. We're adding in an episode so that we can play it so everybody can hear it. Not just Phillies fans, but of course across all the organizations that you've touched, and baseball fans alike love you, including Russell Hetty. He emailed us right the day he heard you were going to be on and said, I am the biggest Don Mattingly fan. Now, I'm not going to go down that rabbit hole. I'm not going to, make you feel uncomfortable. But the point is, he had some great questions, and I wanted to share the first of a couple with you, which is asking, did you really catch a 210-pound blue marlin in Hawaii?
That's for sure true. And
we have to hear this story.
With Keith Hernandez.
Really?
We were out there for the Players Association. We had our meetings out there, and we had a day off or whatever it was, an afternoon off. And we went out, and we weren't hitting anything. So I'm just sitting in the chair, and we're on the way back, and you hear that noise, that zzz, right? And it's like I happen to be the guy in the chair, and 210-pound blue marlin.
What?
How
long did it take you to reel that thing in, Jeff?
It wasn't as bad as you would think. It was like 30 minutes, and just learned that day basically how to let the thing down and let it run, and on the way up you got to tighten it. Or you're reeling on the way down and holding on the way up and letting him run. So the one thing my pinky and the next finger there was numb for about 3 weeks after that, because it is a battle now and it's fun, but it was 30 minutes of like, let's go. If I was at this age, I would have fell down out of the chair. There's no way I'm making it. No chance.
Jeff, how great is this? The two greatest defensive first basemen that I have ever seen were fishing together, and they caught. What a perfect word for what they did. They caught a 210-pound fish. Oh, my God. That is so hilarious. All right, Jeff, what else did that guy ask?
Yeah, he had a couple great questions, including, do you still or did you once drive around Evansville in a 1962 green Ford pickup truck?
I did have a 62 Ford. I was into cars. I love cars as a kid because I probably could. Our next door neighbor as a kid had the coolest cars. They had a gas station they owned, and I mean, they had Chargers and Cudas and stuff, and just loved these cars. Never could obviously afford any of that. But when I got in, obviously had that kind of a little bit extra money. And I bought a 62 Ford, and it was on the tree. So you had to drive it like that. And I remember taking the kids trick or treating that thing. So yeah, I have. True story.
Now, Jeff, I'm going to interrupt you here. Don Mattingly told me maybe 10 years ago, probably longer, about the time that he bought a mobile home. Would you please tell us the story about the mobile home and what happened initially?
Well, I retired. At the end of my career, I bought a bus. So it's not a mobile home, it's a bus. It's a 40-foot Prevost. And really, I bought it for my family because they weren't hardly coming to New York anymore. So I hired a guy to drive it. And like if we were in Kansas City or Cleveland or somewhere close on a Friday after school and then we hit a weekend, they would all come. They'd come, they stay at the hotel. The guy would take the bus and either park it out front, kind of like when you see the musicians, that type of thing. And so that's how it started. And so then that was like probably 2 to 3 years before I was still playing. And then I started, once you do that, once I retire, I'm like, I don't want some guy traveling around with us. And so a guy taught me how to drive these things, right? Took me out. So I went out once and I was good. And we had to have some work done. And it was I think it was in Knoxville. And so we go and the guy's going to come and I'm like, let's just take it. We're going to drive it home the next morning. Let's just take it down the highway and back. So I take it down the highway. We're coming back and there's a curve as you're coming back into this little camp area. And if anybody's driven something where the wheels are basically behind you, if you don't go out a little bit or take it to the edge and then turn, then your back end's just. So this hill, it was kind of like a curve that had like a little hill on it. And I turned it too quick and I hear, and it's making me sick to my stomach. Now I get back and I park it and I look at it and it's like I was going to drive it home the next day. And it's like, well, we had to rent a car and drive back and then come back and get it a little later. So yeah, I did. My kids love to talk to me about that.
All right, Jeff.
I'm glad you guys brought that up.
Yes, of course.
It's always good.
All right, Jeff, what's the last question the guy asked?
Yeah, Russell's doing all the interview prep for us because he has one more question. He said...
I mean, he's getting some stuff out of the archives, too.
Yeah.
Man.
He's asking, can Don Mattingly name all of the people in the Simpsons softball song?
I didn't know there was a song. I'd say no. I cannot.
Okay, well.
Think about the guys. I know Griff was in it.
Right.
Junior was in it. Bogsy's in it. Sachs is in it. I think Ozzie Smith's in it.
Yeah.
Clemens maybe.
Yes.
Straw.
Yes.
Canseco.
Yeah, see there, I wouldn't remember that one.
There's only
That's
one left.
McGuire, maybe.
No, you got
maybe not.
everybody right. You missed Canseco. Jeffrey gave you that, and Mike Soch was in it too.
Oh, Soch was in it. Okay. People still, I mean, that thing's crazy, right? That I've never watched the full episode, and people will ask me what it was like doing The Simpsons, and I'm like, well, it probably wasn't as exciting as you thought because it's really a radio spot, right? You go in and you put your voice there, and that's it.
Right.
It took 15 minutes. Steve Sachs and myself went to the studio, put our little lines in there, and that was it.
Right. And you did a couple of Seinfelds too. People must still ask you about that, correct?
I never done a Seinfeld.
All right, but they
Right?
reference you,
name.
right?
Oh,
George
right.
Costanza,
Yes.
right?
So, people will ask, and I've seen a couple of those episodes because I watched that probably more than more of the reruns than I did on them when it first came out.
Right.
Right. So Don, before we hit record, we were getting to know each other a little bit, and
Oh, I thought you were going to say before we start. I'm like, I hope we have not.
well,
been
now that
doing
we've
this.
warmed up, are we ready to go? Could you imagine? No, before we hit record earlier, we had talked a little bit. Obviously, people who listen to the show know I live outside Philadelphia, and I'm a country music morning show host for 92.5 XTU, and you've already referenced Garth Brooks on the interview here, so I want to know a little bit about your love of country music. Is Garth your guy? Was there somebody you grew up with? Is there an artist you love now?
I like Garth a lot. I'd say Toby was my guy. Met Toby back a few years and kind of just end up having not a hanging out all the time relationship, but anytime that if I had a chance to get to go see him, I would see the show or whatever. He did my first show here for my foundation in Evansville. He flew in for me, which was awesome. Toby was like the dude, right? For me, he's so cool. But I grew up probably not a country guy. I don't think any young kids are loving country outside of being total, in the South or somewhere where it's a lot of country. Played in Nashville, and Conway owned the team. And so there were a lot more. The Oak Ridge Boys were around a little bit. So I started to get here it there a little bit more. But then being around Goose in New York, he was a country guy. Willie Nelson, we went to a Willie Nelson concert. Actually, the day before Righetti throws his no-hitter, he throws his no-hitter July 4th. There was a concert at the Meadowlands with Willie. I think it was all kinds of different people. Linda Ronstadt. A lot of different people. When we went out there, I just remember Rags because he couldn't really drink because he's pitching the next day, and so that's it. He throws the no-no the next day. But so I kept growing with the country more and more, and I think I like all kinds because I love listening. Not that I love, but I listen to my kids' stuff. I like I don't know. I listen to anybody like Tupac. I like Tupac, and I like Biggie, and different artists. But when I get my choice, I seem to keep rolling back the country channel.
Well, we're glad to have you a part of XTU Nation. You are more than welcome to tune it in this season anytime you want.
Yeah, 92.5. I wrote it down.
There you
Don,
go.
can you sing or play an instrument?
No.
Pretty bad?
I don't know. I'm not really going to try to lay it down here. So,
Dad, I think in the history of our interviews, we've only had one person ever sing on our show besides maybe me. And
it was Johnny Bench.
You won't believe.
Bench, right.
Started singing.
Right.
We're like, okay.
We have a mutual friend in Nashville, Lee Thomas Miller. And he said he took Johnny, and you can ask Johnny about this at some point, or maybe Lee Thomas. Lee Thomas is a big baseball fan from Cincy. He took Johnny to the Bluebird in Nashville, and Johnny's sitting there, and he watches the show. I guess he wanted to go to the Bluebird. And he said at the end, they pulled Johnny up, and Johnny just knew every line, knew every word was singing.
That's amazing. So Don, you talked to, pardon me on this one, but years ago, I know this is probably an urban legend. It's probably apocryphal. It's not true. But did you once say that even when you were breaking Lou Gehrig records or doing things that only Lou Gehrig did you say that when you were a little kid, you had never heard of Lou Gehrig and you thought Babe Ruth was a cartoon character? Is that true or is that false?
That's true. Indiana, man, is not a big Yankee area. Evansville, especially, it's
Right.
Cardinal country.
Right.
And you think about it, this is not, and that's an age that there's no internet,
Right.
there's no social media,
Right.
there's a game of the week,
Right.
right? And I just didn't know that much about. I'm busy playing. I'm
Right.
playing 3 sports. I'm going to my brother's games. I'm not paying attention. So I learned a lot about the history of the Yankees after I joined the Yankees.
Right.
But that's definitely, you think about Babe Ruth as a kid, that's a candy bar.
Right.
Right? I didn't think about that. I didn't think about Babe Ruth as the player. And it didn't, I mean, I knew about Babe Ruth before I got to New York, but like some of the names and heard Mickey Mantle and things like that, Yogi Berra, but like Lou Gehrig wasn't a common name for me growing up.
That's amazing. All right, now, Don, I want you to confirm this story. Buck Showalter told me your last year, you went to him, bad back and all, and said, you got to get me out of the cleanup spot. I am not worthy of hitting cleanup anymore for the Yankees. And then when that season ended, you went to Buck Showalter and said, you got to go get another first baseman. I'm not good enough to play first base for the New York Yankees. And they went and got Tino, and then they won championships. Did Buck tell it the right way? He always does, of course.
Buck likes to make it grow a little bit, right? But it is true. I remember going in there and it's like, Buck, you got to get O'Neill. O'Neill's killing the ball, hitting 400 or whatever.
Right.
And I'm like, yeah, get me out of the 3-hole, man. Don't be afraid. If you want to get me out of the 3-hole, you're not going to hurt my feelings.
Right.
Right. Then he put me in the 7-hole and I was like, I don't know about that. Right. Yeah. But I mean, I was retiring at the end of that year. I probably would have retired after 94 without the strike. The strike happened and I didn't want to end my career like that.
Right.
And I knew our team was getting better, but I knew 95 was it.
Don.
But I also thought the last year in Miami was it. And I thought last year in Toronto was going to be it. And so, but yeah, I kind of knew that was it.
Who was your guy growing up, the one you watched that either you tried to emulate in your own career as a kid growing up or somebody you just really looked up to?
Well, my guy that I wanted to hit was Carew, for sure. And, and you don't get to see him that much, but I see, knew the batting titles and all that type of thing. But I emulated a lot of different guys. Like, this area that I grow up is it's kind of Cardinals, but Cincinnati was winning. And wiffle ball games in the back, you had to hit the way they hit, right? Cincinnati had a lot of lefties. I'd put different guys in the lineup that would play. Sometimes Tony had to sit or Johnny had to sit if I could get another lefty in the lineup. So I kind of ended up, being more of those guys. But who I wanted to hit was Carew. For sure. But you know what happens in your career, you learn. I wanted to be like Rod, but at some point you got to be myself. Right. And you got to, he was a great role model for me to follow, and hit the ball where it's pitched was the way I grew up trying to hit. But over time you got to end up doing your own thing.
Right. Jeff, you're too young to remember Rod Carew. He was a magician at the plate, one of the great bunters I've ever seen. So, Don, without hurting anybody's feelings, if they shifted on Rod Carew like they shifted, on everyone else 5 years ago, what would that look like? What would he have hit if they had tried to shift on him?
Yeah, Rod seemed to be able to do what he wanted. Right. Him, a guy like Tony Gwynn was the same way. He could shoot that ball the other way anytime he wanted. Bogsy.
Right.
I just don't think they would have shifted
him.
But
of course.
You can't shift a guy that uses the whole field like that. But I guess you could. But yeah, he would have tore the ships apart for sure.
Right.
So Don, you referenced your youngest son. How old is your youngest?
11
years old. Okay, so he's the one getting on mom and dad's Amazon account and sending Phillies gear to the house now. And that must be really nice that, see, obviously you have older boys too, but to see baseball through his eyes. How special is that for you?
No, it was the game's changed in a way that's really good. Teams are really good about families now and kids. And when early on in the game, when I was there, kids weren't a welcome sight to be able to take to the ballpark with you and let them hang out and things like that. The change of the game has helped that because the locker rooms are huge now. There's mega rooms. Kids can kind of hide in different places and things like that. But to be able to watch his excitement last year during the playoff run and even late in the year, trying to get in has been really cool. And it's kind of like he kind of fell in love with baseball. He played baseball. He liked it. Kind of fell in love with baseball last year. Wow. And to watch him, because we'd go to the ballpark at 11 o'clock, he'd, hit a little bit, throw, whatever, get the shag BP. Now hit 3 off days during the World Series, right? We had a day off in New York because you play your first 2 games, you get a day off. Well, nobody really works that. We go to the ballpark that day. Hardly anybody works out. So you got the kids, they're out there on the center field playing ball in Yankee Stadium. Same thing happens in Seattle. First 2 at home. We're on the road. We got kids out playing ball in center field. And there's not just Louis. There's a lot of kids on our club. Same thing happens in L.A. First 2 games at home, we go to L.A. We got an off day. We're out there. Louis playing around in that grass out there, and it is so sweet out there, the grass. He's like, Dad, I could sleep on this. So it's just that type of stuff, right? But the experience for a kid to be able to go through that and to get on the field and actually be able to play, watch the games, be a part of the celebrations, all of that, unbelievable experience. I didn't get to do it with my other boys, and I wish I would have, right? It's something that they missed.
Last question, okay? I can't imagine anything better than you going to your first World Series and sharing it with your 11-year-old son. But now you have a chance with a really good Phillies team to go to the World Series as the bench coach, and your son is the general manager. I'm not sure too many things could beat that. Am I right?
No, I think you're right on that. I think Preston and I have always been on the opposite sides in pro ball. He's been with San Diego when I was in Miami. Then he moves to Philly. So we're always on opposite teams. And I wanted him to do well. I know he wants me to do well. And really last year, I'm hoping it's Philly and Toronto in the World Series. We're both there. We both got a shot.
Right.
It was going to be a blast, right? But now the opportunity with a great club, like you said, to be able to try to win one together, that would be the coolest. Nothing would be able to beat that as far as my career, is be able to be a part of working with your son and taking a shot and winning the World Series.
I mean, listen, Don, winning a World Series with your son is pretty cool. We did get 10,000 downloads last month, Dad, on this podcast. That's a pretty big deal.
I don't even know what that means, Jeff. I guess
know
that's
you don't.
Good news, right? All right, that's enough of that.
It's not that great. That's
right.
You guys sound alike. Did anybody tell you that? You guys sound
everyone
exactly alike.
We had Tony Gwynn Jr. on. He sounds exactly like his father, and Jeffrey sounds exactly like me. So when we started this podcast 3 years ago, that was like the first comment. I can't tell who's who. Jeffrey sounds exactly like Dad does.
You got to get Aaron Sebio on here with you guys. That would be great. That would be awesome. JP's awesome.
Yeah, I wanted to do an episode. Maybe, Dad, for your 70th birthday coming up at the end of this year, I'll have everybody who does a Kirkshin impersonation on the show. And I was on Dan Le Batard, Don, and they asked me, can you do an impression of your dad? And I said, I'm doing it right now. What else can I do? I don't have anything.
And let me just finish with Aaron Seavey on this. I went to him after he completely ambushed me with that unbelievably bad but great impersonation. And I said, JP, tell me, please, that you could do a bunch of other impersonations. Tell me you could do, somebody great. And he goes, no, I can only do you. So he's only got one guy, He can't do Jack Nicholson, but he can do me. That doesn't make sense. So
yeah, that'd be great. He should be on with you guys.
He's the best. All right, Don, thanks so much for joining us today. Thanks for putting up with us, asking about free throws and buses and everything else. It was a delight.
All right. Appreciate you guys.
And
Talk to you guys soon.
If you have free time in Philly and you need country music tickets, you know the guy to call. I got you covered.
All right.
And
I
Dad,
like it.
it's country music, not country western anymore.
Look,
We've
when
had to
Don
teach my
said
dad that.
Toby is my guy. My Toby is Toby Hara. When I think of somebody, that's how bad I am at music, unfortunately.
I like Toby Hara too.
Yes, it's great.
Yeah.